Welcome to the Digital Forester Podcast, where we talk to foresters about how they are using digital technologies in their day-to-day forestry work. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Digital Forester. Today, I'm joined by Bruce MacArthur, CEO of Tesera Systems. Bruce, how are you doing today?
Fantastic. You?
Awesome. Good. I can't complain. We were joking earlier. It's January 31st already. Who would have thunk it? It's this month has just flown by. Did you feel that way as well?
It sure has. Yeah, it's amazing. I felt like it hardly started and it's over. Yeah, so it's
Crazy
nice
times.
to see the new year and everybody getting off to a great start. So
for sure. Well, definitely tomorrow will be New Year for many. The Chinese New Year, Year of the Tiger tomorrow. So definitely a new year for many. Where are we reaching you nowadays? I just never know where people are. Are they at home? Or are they somewhere else? Where are you calling in from today?
Yeah, so I'm based just outside of Calgary in the foothills, in between Cochrane and Calgary. Nice. And we're a remote company, so we're spread right across from British Columbia all the way to Nova Scotia, and we have one person in Thailand actually. So so we're spread all over the place. Yeah.
Wow, Thailand. We're gonna have to dig into that one. I'm gonna curious to know how that works and how I could sign up. That sounds amazing. So maybe as we get into it, I always love to ask our guests, how did you get into forestry? Because looking, at your LinkedIn profile, undergrad in forestry, Tesera Systems, you've been leading it for over 24 years, but you're a trained forester, so like the space, and I think you're gonna have awesome. I know you'll have awesome insights. But maybe for our listeners, walk us through that journey of how you got into this space in the first place.
Yeah, so I grew up in Vancouver, North Vancouver, actually, and my father at the time, he's since passed, but at the time he had a real close friend who was general manager of one of the sawmills in the Lower Mainland. And when I was 14 years old, I went down to knock on the door of this company and walked into the recruiter. Not even this individual, just it was a recruiter. And he said, "Are you 16?" I said, "Absolutely." And he said, "Well, when can you start?" And I said, "Well, I can start on cleanup," and gave me a hard hat. And then when I was 14 years old, I would take the bus over and work graveyard shifts on cleanup underneath the sawmills, cleaning all that stuff up. And I did that all the way through high school and then into university as well, when I started working out in the field as well for the same company. So, but it was interesting to get that initial sort of background, knowing how the sawmilling side of things worked. And
that's very cool. So you're inside. Normally a lot of folks are like on the outside, but you started within the mill. So I'm dying to know, what was minimum wage like back in the day? Because when I was doing that work, I think I was like, I don't know, like $3 and something.
$3 and change was union IWA wages. And that was a lot, man. I'll tell you, that was, you were living the high life.
Oh yeah. I think in my day, when I was doing the McDonald's and Timmy's, and then I got to a restaurant, and when they said, "Hey, we're going to pay you $6 an hour," I thought I won the lottery. I was like, "Holy cow, this is awesome!" It's like, twice what I was making at McDonald's. It was great. So you worked in the mill and you stuck with it. So obviously it piqued an interest, and you stayed in province. I believe UBC is your alma mater. Tell me that thinking there, something didn't pull you in a different way, like being in the mill, the engineering side didn't get a hold of you. You stuck true to the forestry.
It was. I enjoyed hiking, and I enjoyed the woods and just being out on the landscape, and that growing up, our family home was in the forest in North Vancouver, just right in the trees, and used to go hiking up on Grouse Mountain. And lots of interest in ecology and forestry, and just kind of, I decided that forestry sounded interesting, and it was something to try. And here we are a few years later.
Yeah, a few years later, exactly. Now I'm curious, would you in your wildest dreams back when you were studying undergrad think you'd see, buildings constructed with engineered wood on campus? Did you ever foresee that one coming on campus?
It's interesting. I've always thought that that sort of engineered wood products would take hold, and but it was great to see how people have embraced them and then used them in such different and creative ways. So UNBC was a great example as well.
That's true, yeah,
of
absolutely.
how they used it there as well as UBC. So, but lots of different interesting buildings across British Columbia and Canada now, and internationally. Yeah, so it's fantastic to see.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. Yeah, UNBC, beautiful campus. Love the campus; it's gorgeous. So, thinking of your forestry career, maybe walk us through before we. Well, I don't know. Maybe do we jump right into Tesera? Because again, looking at your background, unless I missed a section, like was it straight out of the school? Then you said, "Hey, I'm launching Tesera Systems, and here we go," or is there some industry paths that kind of got you to that point where you say, you know what, I'm going to be an entrepreneur and launch Tesera Systems? Maybe share some thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I mean, my background, I worked for a company called Crown Zellerbach, and worked as their sort of appraisals forester for quite a few years, and eventually was asked to become manager of forest economics at COFI for Coastal Council of Forest Industries, and from there I was asked to head up to the to NILS, the Northern Interior Lumber Sector, which I did, and was involved in forest policy, that sort of thing up there, and while up there was introduced to Northwood at the time, and they had embarked on this thing called the Model Forest program, and so I was asked to be general manager of that program, and it was through that initiative that I got into R&D and the development of spatial planning technologies, which eventually led to the company, and decided to become an entrepreneur. And the rest is sort of history. We're in our 24th year now as a company. So yeah,
it's amazing. Congratulations on milestone. Well, 25, I guess maybe there'll be a big party, whether it's 24,
yeah,
25.
you'll be invited, I'll tell you. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, looking forward to it. But no, hats off, for people who haven't taken that entrepreneur path, to get to 24, 25. That's an amazing feat, testament to your leadership and obviously doing something right and solving people's problems. So maybe from that point of view, for our listeners, walk us through who Tesera Systems is. You mentioned it's a remote first company. I'm also curious, we'll digress, curious to see how the pandemic affected you, if it did at all. But maybe for our listeners, walk us through maybe the genesis, some of the cool things you were doing, because again, I know I've crossed paths with you over the years, and it's not just forestry, there's some other really cool innovative stuff you guys have built. So maybe walk us through how that journey started and where it is today.
Sure. So leading off my previous comments about spatial planning tools and technologies, and the model forest, there was quite a interest at the time. We'd be in the early 90s when geomatics was really in its infancy in many ways. Esri had just getting started, and companies like Hughes Aircraft and Esri and the various academia, the province, different interest groups all collaborated around developing of a technology, the development of a technology that could help support forecasting landscapes for all of these different multiple values, but also trying to understand what are those limits, what can work, what won't work, and how do we try to accommodate as much as possible, but also inform people about the limits to what is possible and why. So that led to the formation of the company. And fast forward a few years, the technology itself evolved with various types of platforms, and has, I think, provided really a means by which resource professionals globally now can take advantage of technology and improve the quality of outcomes at a scale that was not possible earlier on in our careers. And I realize I've jumped, a couple of decades forward, but really the quantum change that's happened is the fact that people now can use these technologies in innovative ways that was really limited to maybe some professors at university or some really smart PhDs that I'd look at with awe and wonder how they could possibly do these things or consider in their minds how it might be possible. But now with the advancements of compute, with cloud processing, with machine learning, with remote sensing, all of these things kind of coming together at a time where it's enabling companies like yourself, ourselves, others to be able to take advantage of them in unique and novel ways that helps our clients in ways that was not possible previously.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a lot of game-changing technologies came about. Again, I chuckle when you say, when Esri was starting in the 90s. Yeah, it doesn't feel like that long ago, but I guess, it was still a few decades ago. I remember the early days. So maybe tell our listeners, I know you kind of teased at it, and I actually want to learn myself. I love doing this because I get to learn straight from the source. But Tesera has HRIS, high resolution inventory solution. Hopefully it's not HRIS, but HRIS. Maybe tell our listeners more about that, because I think that brings together, LiDAR, Earth observation, cloud, like pretty much every tech jargon you mentioned, and maybe describe what it is and how it came to be. Because even listening to you, like when we think about innovation, it's hard to get, the stuff in PhDs' brains and academia into like the layperson's hands. So maybe start off with HRIS. Give us the
Sure.
lowdown on what it is.
Yeah, so what it is a means and a technology by which to produce a forest inventory that is reliable. Reliable in the context that it gives practitioners confidence that what they see digitally in a georeference database is representative of what is actually out there in the field. And that might sound simple, and it might sound like it's obvious, but in the past, historically, one of the things that I've had quite a few beers and conversations with colleagues such as yourself and others, that was always elusive. The inventory itself was always something was so generalized, and there was always another forest around the corner that potentially might offset the fact if the inventory was out of whack. There was always another forest or another tenure perhaps we could acquire that would allow us to fill the wood supply gap. Come along environmental concerns and environmental organizations and the general public, people started asking more and more questions in the 80s about what sustainability meant, and people asked questions about the basis for sustainability and proving it, demonstrating it, and not just taking it for granted. And that caused, I think, practitioners a lot of angst because I can tell you from the foresters I know and just my knowledge of those historical inventories, they had weaknesses that were inherent. And they were partly due to the fact that the technology just had not matured to be able to improve the estimates that we somewhat take for granted now and expect. So there was a real frustration, I think, on behalf of a lot of professionals, as well as regulators and the public interest groups and individuals that we had to do better. I can tell you that one of the funny things that I think about now is the disconnect sometimes between individuals that wanted to really race with the new technologies, whether it be remote sensing or whether it be cloud compute, and those individuals that just wanted to take a more cautious, approach, a little slower perhaps. Our philosophy has always been to adopt, adapt, develop in that order. And as these new technologies really revealed themselves in terms of their potential, we really wanted to adopt them rather than try to recreate them, and then adapt them from a perspective of forest inventory, and only do development when it was absolutely necessary, because development is costly, it's risky, and it takes time. And
for sure.
Yeah, so maybe I'll stop there.
Yeah, so thinking of that with I'm gonna I love role playing on this show. So I'm Forest Corp. I shouldn't say Forest Corp. Maybe there actually is a Forest Corp. I think there is. So maybe F Corp per se. And I'm interested in HRIS because my inventory is dated. Someone photo interpreted. It's from bajillion years ago, and if I lick my thumb and wave it in the air, that's about how good it is. And people show up expecting this species and they get something completely different, and etc. What do I need to bring to the table to really get the full potential out of HRIS? Like obviously remote sensing data, ancillary GIS data. I know on your website there's this great chart in terms of comparing and contrasting different things. But if I was the forester of F Corp and wanting to get started, what would I need to bring to you to really launch it? And by the way, I have no recent plot data, so we'll start there, setting some ground rules. But what would you need for me to get something going?
Yeah, so one of the pieces of data that is I feel is critically important, and I think it's been proven through some of the analytics that we do, is ground information is still critical. And I'll explain why. There's a lot of improvements that have been made in terms of remote sensing, and whether it's 4-band color infrared, or whether it's collected from an aerial platform or remotely from space, the improvement in that type of data and the cost coming down makes it available now in a way that previously was not available. And the remote sensing information needs to be connected to the ground, and the sort of the georeferencing of ground information, a ground plot center and its orientation fused into space with LiDAR or with 4-band color infrared to be able to make inferences, build models of features that some of which the attributes which you've measured on the ground, but to be able to predict at a landscape level based on ground plots, based on remote sense data, based on models you've built and computed. To be able to do that at scale is what we've built. And
Cool.
so that involves ground plots, it involves remote sensing, it involves compute, it involves science, mathematics, statistics, to be able to come up with those inferences. And then to be able to present it back to a client in a way that they understand, with the types of attributes that they're used to seeing at a scale that is flexible and small units that they can use for planning, but also fully scalable to any sort of size or combination or permutation that they might be interested in from a management perspective.
Right. So it doesn't sound like LiDAR is a must input if it's available, or is it a must input into the HRIS in addition to the other remote sensing data? Does it give an extra boost, or is it one of those like, yeah, if you have it, great. If you don't, we still have magic that we can still get to what you need pretty well.
Yeah, it's proven to be a very useful piece of information, because it provides insights into structure of the canopy, structure of the boles of the trees, and their interrelationship to each other in the matrix. So yeah, it's proven to be a pretty powerful piece of information, piece of the puzzle. But there's other ways of making those types of or using different types of spectral imagery. For example, radar is a interesting technology that can be used and has benefits in many parts of the world, where cloud cover is omnipresent. It's always there, virtually always there, and to be able to see through clouds and to make inferences as well is another piece of data that's, I think, increasingly used and useful for all sorts of predictions.
Right. So this HRIS creates this Tesera forest inventory, and then as a user smartphone, I can interact with it. Web app, I can interact with it. Both or any way, choose how you want. Whether you want to pull in the services, along those models.
Web enabled, So and I think the other philosophy that we have is we recognize that the pace of technology is just exponential. So we don't want to tie our hands anymore, right? In terms of tying a client to a particular platform or tying our client to a particular piece of data. We want to remain and design our systems so that they're able to suck in and use whatever the next generation of data is. And that's I think an exciting opportunity for young foresters and young entrepreneurs that seeing the potential future. We don't want to tie ourselves to what it is today.
There's so much knowledge out there, as long as you're willing to put the work, whether listening to a podcast as an example or just doing research. So I know, looking at some background info on Tesera Systems, I caught the comment of open source. How does that fit into your tech stack? Is it we try and use open source as much as we possibly can, or is it more of we're agnostic, we really don't care, it's like pick your poison, whichever works better, we can work with both? Is there a thesis behind that around open source or closed source?
So I think, well, our experience has been that open source has both advantages and disadvantages, but I think the advantages outweigh the disadvantages in that there's a lot of people doing development in open source. And when I mean a lot, I mean hundreds of thousands of developers around the world. And by virtue of the sheer numbers and the sheer volume of work that's going on using open source technologies, a lot of capacity and capabilities are built in redundancies, lessons learned, and it enables us to be able to utilize the benefits of all of that knowledge and experience in designing our approaches, and designing our high resolution inventory solution in such a way that it gives us and our clients greater confidence that in the event that they have a question or they need to drill in to see a little deeper how things occur, we can provide that insight to them without any concern. The secret sauce, of course, in a lot of technologies is how you put all those things together. It's kind of like your mom's favorite recipe that she doesn't want to share with anybody else. You know, how do you do this? Well, it takes years of experience, and it's those subtle things that you've done to be able to create that recipe that works. But I think open source is, at least for now, in this current age of technology development, has a lot of benefits.
Yeah, so thinking of our tech savvy listeners, the young ones, are there certain open source technologies that are kind of the go-to for you? You know, the leaflet front end, or, you know, Postgres backend database, or usual stack? Are there certain ones that you can share with the young up and comers in terms of what you guys like?
Yeah, I think all of those. Yeah, so obviously there's the Python, R, GitHub, AWS, Elastic, container services, all the different sort of EC2, Postgres. Yeah, on the statistical side, there's a number of different platforms now available for doing ML work, deep learning. You know, we're using SageMaker is our kind of go-to package. But yeah, there's lots of different types of analytical packages that are part of the stack. Yeah. But pretty much, you know, those are common across most of the different types of platforms now folks are using. So yeah, nothing.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny you say that, Bruce. Like, oh yeah, it's kind of common, and there's times I think I'm like, you know, what's common to us sometimes could be, you know, like 27 PhDs removed for someone else. Because I even think back to an email I got, like someone had photos and they weren't aligning, and they're like, we hate to ask, but could you share trade secrets on how you might like get these, you know, air photos to line up? I'm like, yeah, that's called photogrammetry. Like there's tons of software out there. Here's a list of 20, but it kind of surprised me because I was like, man, that's like, so like in the geospace, it's like, yeah, if you need to orthorectify the imagery, like it's taught in schools, right? But again, when you move to different camps, it may be just complete and utter Greek. Now I know on your website, UP42 or Up42, I never actually know whether it's Up or UP42. Up42 partnership, I believe I saw in a press release. What can you tell us about that relationship and what potential or where you see the world going?
Yeah, so that came out of a competition that Airbus had, and we competed in and came in third in the world.
Nice.
And that sort of led to their relationship they formed with or this platform called Up42, and it's really a way to share your technologies with others in a online capacity, and for them to be able to take advantage of some of the scripts that you've written, and you know, that can create you know, follow-up business for your firm, and it also, it's a way of just getting the message out about your company and what you do, and some of the cool features of what you've built, right? So it's a way to sort of carve off a couple of pieces and provide them for specific needs, use cases, and deliver those through a platform. So, and of course, they cover all sorts of, you know, diversity of types of business needs and use cases.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And thinking of the Tesla tech suite of offerings, if I'm correct, and I'm probably not going to say it, properly have to correct me, but there's some cool segmentation technology you guys
Mhm.
have. Is it line LPSS, or fill in the blanks for me and tell me about what that is?
Well, I mean, the the automated segmentation is really, drawing lines on a map around things that are unique, and to try to come up with um, visual representations of um, those differences for resource managers. And part of the challenge in drawing a line is we all see the world differently, and
Sure.
the reality is that there's no absolute line. Um, Lines are a way for human beings to be able to imagine what is potentially there, and to get their brain around some values or some attributes just for a particular area.
I feel like you're going to
Blind can
offer
do
me a blue pill or a red pill and make me choose based on
Yeah,
that.
that's right. Now, the beauty of technology and the way things are going is the dissolving of those lines, the dissolving, creating new lines, to be able to fully scale from a small, let's say, 0.1 of a hectare to millions of hectares, and to be, if you're interested in above ground biomass, or you're interested in a particular wildlife species or wildlife species habitat, to be able to reimagine your inventory with the construct of that particular resource value, and essentially redraw all the lines. And that's now possible. That wasn't possible a few years ago. And that provides a very powerful way for considering your landscape for all of the different types of values that you're interested in managing. So in the case of a production forest and you're looking at wood supply, how does that feed your supply chain? And what, how is that impacted under different market conditions? Or how is that impacted under different milling requirements and different manufacturing facilities? And of course, the dynamics of your on the ground wood supply and how that's distributed or allocated or optimized or scheduled, those all become, that's all critically important and dependent on what's actually on the ground in your inventory. So in the past, the inventory was always the weakest link, I think, in a lot of technologies. And when I think of your technologies that you've produced, I think of how important it is, for all the way through a supply chain, to make sure that all the pieces that are dependent on each other are as accurate as possible. And I think probably one of the weakest pieces has been our forest inventory historically. And that's what we as a company have completely focused on. We're just focused on that one problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one problem, but it's a big one, and trying to affect change in the industry can be challenging. And maybe that's where I'm going to shift. I'm curious to get your thoughts, because you've been at this for quite a while, and as you noted, you've watched new technology come and some go, truthfully, at the same
Yeah.
time. But thinking about foresters, and again, our listeners are like everywhere around the world, so different geographies, different jurisdictions, different types of forestry. But when we think about innovation, and you got something good, and it's way better than what we have now, what have you experienced to date in terms of the barriers that are really holding some folks from just jumping 2 feet in? Like sometimes you almost have to kick them off the ledge, right? Going like, this is good for you. It's like, we'll do a pilot, we'll do a scale up, etc. But at the end of the day, I'm still kicking you off the ledge because this is good for you. So in your experience, is there a set of patterns that you see consistently when you engage people around the world with your services that just, gee whiz, if we as a community could just all collectively get over it, we would just accelerate so much quicker?
Yeah, I think it's the confidence in ourselves to be able to have a conversation like we're having with theoretically our competitors. I don't view it that way. I think there's a huge amount of work around the world to go on. I think Canada in particular has historically, we've probably held ourselves back by not embracing each other's strengths to the extent that we can. And you know, when I have an opportunity to talk up some of our competitors, I do, because we don't do everything. We don't want to do everything, and we can't do everything, quite frankly. So I think there's a real change in an opportunity for us to be able to collaborate in off of our own particular strengths in the global marketplace to really make a huge impact. And I think for me, the passion that keeps me going is the fact that I think sustainability is based on really good information. And it's based on good models, it's based on really good technologies, because I truly believe that resource managers want to make the best decision for their clients, but also for their companies and for their countries and the world. And I think the only thing that's really holding us back is having connections between all of these really good technologies, data that's available, making it available in such a way that people can afford to use it and incorporate it seamlessly and produce results that can be delivered to clients that they understand. And to be able to do that efficiently, consistently, in ways that that different clients require, and is really I think the opportunity.
Yeah,
both a challenge and an opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, you know, I've learned, maybe I have enough arrows in my back, but you know, sometimes partnering makes you go a heck of a lot faster than trying to go it alone. And on top of that, your comment, you know, at least stateside, you know, they're bullish on everything and happy to, you know, drive into the wall 1,000 miles per hour and pick themselves up. And sometimes as us Canadians, it's almost like we're too polite, like, oh, I'm sorry, Bruce. It's like, you go ahead and try and crush me. Oh, no, you go ahead. And like, and then we're both dancing, and then people are like, what the heck's going on with these people? Like, fix my problem, solve my problem. And so sometimes I think, you know, that Canadianism gets in our ways, despite maybe not acknowledging it. Now, global presence. You guys work globally. What are some of the countries you work in today? I know at one point I was excited to catch up in Chile with you, because I know you guys were going on the training mission, and I feel it was Expo Corma. I kind of gave them a tagline, you know, the conference that never happened, because I think it was supposed to happen in 2019, and there was civil unrest. But then pandemic hit, it got rescheduled a bajillion times. I felt bad for the organizers, because I was like, you know, at some point just cancel the damn thing, and then at least you can start, you know, another year. But that was one that was just an odd one. But maybe for our listeners, share with us some of the geographies you work in, because obviously you mentioned someone is remote in Thailand. Is that work driven or just personal life? But what are some of the countries that you're working in now, so our listeners who might be from there know to reach out?
Yeah, so in Latin America, a number of different countries down there, and Brazil, we've had a presence, working with a partner there, and across Canada, obviously, and the US, and Europe, and also South Africa. So yeah, a range of different projects and different parts of the world. We've really, one of our, I guess our philosophies is we don't want to replicate what works already. So there's a lot of companies that for instance, do timber cruising. So we've developed the methodologies and the protocols and the standards for cruising, and we've done a lot of work in the LiDAR and the color infrared and setting the standards for data acquisition. So we don't have planes, we don't have tons of people. We have a really small group. We're very small, but we're mighty. And part of our philosophy is that we try to use the expertise that exists in these different forests and these different regions and these different communities to the max. And we work with them to help them understand what needs to be done and how to collect that data and then incorporate it into what we do. So that allows us to move relatively seamlessly around the world and work with different players without any technical barrier.
Yeah, that's very cool. And so you mentioned at the start, remote first company. So I'm guessing when the pandemic kicked in, like it was not even a speed bump for you, not even a blip. It was just keep trucking. I shouldn't say trucking. There's a protest in Ottawa now with the truckers. But anyhow, it sounds like it was just like didn't really phase the Tesera team. It was just, hey, business as usual. Keep working away.
I've not found a company to date, and anyone listening to this that can find an earlier company, but we went remote about over 15 years ago. Wow. And so we had about 30 servers in Cochrane, and we were I can remember going at normally the servers would fail about 2 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday morning, and the process, and I would be down. It was never during the week, it was always on a weekend, and have to go down there and swap out a hard drive and start up a process again. But when cloud became more available, we were early adopters, and same as I mentioned, remote, and we sold our office and became completely virtual, and that's really allowed us to sort of engage globally without any barrier whatsoever. It's quite it's quite nice to have that physical office that you have to feel like you have to go into, but it takes a certain discipline to work remotely and to work with your colleagues that way. But yeah, we really do, as a tight team, we really enjoy it. And
yeah, that's incredible. 15 years. Wow. So you kind of knew the future before the future had even come knocking on the doorstep. So maybe along those lines, with the digital forester, we always like to pick our guests' brain in terms of what gets them excited in that 1 year, 3 year. Because again, you're talking nonchalantly, Bruce, like, oh, AWS, ML, we do this, and it sounds like so easy, right? But there's some serious chops happening behind the scenes in terms of the stack. So from a technology side, even though you're kind of like, yeah, we're going with the flow, like you guys know this stuff. So thinking of 1 year, 3 year, what gets you excited? You're 24 going on 25 year, you've seen things come and go, the hype cycle, some that was just complete and utter nonsense that went away. What's getting you excited, keeping you up, getting you up each day in the next 1 to 3 year high timelines?
Yeah, so we're currently focused on complete automation. Your listeners may or may not know this, but many of the steps involved in producing a forest inventory often are fairly discrete steps. And when those discrete steps require you to finish a step and then do the QA and then feed that into the next process. And there are many of them. And to be able to seamlessly run through all of those steps from start to finish to produce an inventory is kind of like the holy grail of forest inventory. At least that in my mind, I think of it that way. And so we've been embarked over the last year or so on completing that process, at least as it is today, recognizing that technology will continue to change and evolve. But we're probably, I don't know, I would say maybe 70% of the way now to that beta goal of full automation. And from there, we'll undoubtedly continue to make improvements and more changes and try to speed things up. But that's really the goal for us, is to be able to offer this as a service, inventory as a service, including inventory updates, which we haven't talked about yet, and treating an inventory as a valuable asset that is continuously kept up to date.
Yeah.
And then that feeds into all sorts of supply chain models and processing opportunities and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue. So maybe there's this. I've started to see this here and see people talking about this living inventory, this thing that just kind of evergreens, and again, depending what frequency you need, it just kind of evolves. Maybe evolves not the right word, but grows, and it's kind of tweaked and calibrated. What are your thoughts on that? Like, obviously you're thinking that way. Do you think that's something really far off, or do you think we have all the technological pieces, the know-how from the forestry body of knowledge to get to that point that inventories update every year, 6 months, 5 years? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's coming soon, and a lot faster than maybe some people think. There are some technical challenges that come along with it, and there's a lot of I think opportunity for different jurisdictions to like we were just talking about, companies collaborating. I think there's new opportunities for jurisdictions now to collaborate. The idea that every province is unique, and that every forest is different, and that our rules are separate, and the way we do things are different, is a real.
We're more complex than you.
Yeah, that's a little old, and I think we all know that's not the case. And there's real opportunities, I think, to rethink that, and just as there is opportunities for harmonizing markets, there's opportunities for harmonizing the way that we think about data and forest inventories across Canada and around the world, for that matter. So there's more similarities than there is differences, and I think the only real barrier in my mind is that jurisdictional difference that can create an artificial barrier to be able to realize that potential. So that's a nice way of saying, come on, bureaucrats, get on board. Let's start working together. And I know that there's complexities in the bureaucracy in terms of systems and the way that all of these things work, but I think there really is a real strong pull and need for that maybe is not happening as quickly as it should.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I've asked that question a few times with and other guests, and inevitably, originally I always thought the conversation would kind of go down that rabbit hole of technology and stuff. And then what's amazing that so far we're batting like 5 for 5 or 6 for 6 this year, where people are talking about the change management or the people side as the thing that's kind of holding us back, less about the technological capacity or capability to actually to achieve the outcomes we're looking for. So I find that fascinating. Thinking of climate, has anything happened? Well, not anything happened. Obviously, things are happening. We don't need to look at BC fires and stuff. But is there anything that's happened on the climate side that, as a trained forester, someone who's been working in this space for several decades, is there something that kind of comes at you as a kind of caught you off guard or surprise, the speed of some of the change or the extreme events that you're seeing? Is there something that you just didn't really see coming?
I mean, I don't want to sound like I saw it coming. I felt that there was maybe a sense by some that it wasn't happening as fast as it was. And I think when I think of our changing climate conditions and the effect it's going to have on forestry, I truly think it's we're at the beginning of a monumentous pivot in the need for us to understand the consequences of changing climate on forest ecosystems and the biosphere in general, and how that's going to affect the industry and communities, forest communities globally. And I think there's just a huge amount of work that has to happen there. And I think whether it's above ground biomass, ESG reporting, that's becoming more and more of a requirement for companies, or the trading of credits and trying to create value, new markets in that regard. That's a potential as well. Those are all certainly near-term opportunities, but I think that's just scratching the surface.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's going to be a lot more.
Yeah.
And I don't know exactly how that's going to reflect itself in the marketplace, but I think that's going to be an increasing part of what we do. And I mean, as a company, we're collaborating more and more with others on the above ground carbon, below ground carbon side of things, and that's becoming kind of an offering that that I think is becoming more standard.
Yeah, the carbon that was once not so sexy has become very, very appealing and maybe the driver nowadays on a lot of initiatives in the marketplace per se. So maybe a last question. I started asking this to folks. If you're to look back, you've been in technology, you've been developing cool systems, and again, we got HRIS, we've got other technologies at play. If you're to look back to young Bruce, you're coming out of the mill and heading to UBC, is there based on what you know today and forestry technology or whatever that it may be, is there a pro tip you would give yourself per se?
Yeah, I think to believe in yourself and kind of never give up. You're going to run into a lot of naysayers, and a lot of folks that are going to tell you that it's been done before, or that it's good enough.
Yeah.
Or that there's really not a need for that. And I think you've got to trust your instincts as a professional when you see a need, and if you believe in it enough, not blindly, but in communication with your colleagues and others, it does take time. It takes a long time and commitment. Some people are amazing and able to do it in a heartbeat, and to be able to turn a technology into $1 billion company in a year or less. Most of us, I think, are not gifted that way. It's going to take longer, and you've got to stick with it. You got to have the stick-to-itiveness to hang in there and work with your colleagues and work as a team. And that's probably the biggest message I would send, or lesson that I've learned, is don't expect it to happen quickly.
Yeah, that's awesome advice. And again, kudos to you and Tesera Systems, 24 years and 25, because stats wise, most startups are gone after a year, right? And to make 3 years, it's like that's even an exception, and to get beyond 5, that's even exceptional type of thing. So getting past 2 decades, you're obviously doing right, and trusting your gut and holding the course. So the last question I have is folks who want to learn more about what Tesera does, your solutions, what's the best way they can get a hold of you as we wind down? Are you LinkedIn, Facebook, or what are you? Is it just good old email or website? What's the best way people could get a hold of you, Bruce?
The website, email, and I'm even available on the phone. So, but you can reach us through most of those platforms. And
and the website's teserasystems.com.
Tesera.com.
Tesera.com.
Yeah.
And email.
TESERA.com. Yeah.
Yep.
And email Bruce. It's Bruce.MacArthur, spelled just like the general. MacArthur at Tesera.com. Happy to answer any questions and connect with new folks. So yeah.
There you go. There you go. Well, digital foresters out there, we've been joined by Bruce MacArthur, CEO of Tesera Systems. So there you have it. You've got, check out the website. You've got his email. As times I chuckle, some people are like, oh, it's like, what's the big deal with the email? It's like, hey, sometimes it's really hard to find the CEO's email out there and just reach out directly. So you just heard it on this episode. So please reach out, learn more about what they're doing around the world. It's super cool. I love watching it. So Bruce, thanks so much for joining. As I said, we'll connect one of these days. It's sooner, hopefully 2022. I say this in part jest, but in seriousness as well. I think Canadians have something to offer, and yeah, it's our time to kind of maybe own the podium and kind of come together and figure out what we can do, not just here, but elsewhere outside of our country. So thanks so much for joining. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Kevin, and all the best. And thanks very much for doing this podcast. It's great.
Sure. Awesome.